All right, recording started.
You said it was just then?
Yep.
Okay, all right.
Let me know when everyone's doing it.
Okay, I just got it. Let me download it real quick.
Okay.
Find my timer also.
I'm good as well.
Sure.
Yeah. All right, I'm good. The maritime advantage only ratification protects global fish stocks. PAP 12, conventional trade, manufacturer, a fishing party, people, original media, EU, fishing, American fisher, adversely affected by foreign fishery, illegally harvest party, which persuaded the nation to abide by standards. Fish wars go global, vessel 20, round boat, illegal fishing on the industrial scale, dispute with boundaries, Africa fleet, the break rules, unregulated fishing, cuts global fish, issues on debating laws, driven by countries spreading power, China and India, Brazil, Sri Lanka, India, contested by food security, increased access about fish population, and fishing is an existential threat. American treaty making is good, building coalitions is possible and better than the Chinese alternative Constitution. 25, Southern Reform Institution, like the EU media for results later, Beijing, feeding the U.S. decline to me. The global work order has already rules, and the such issues need to be greater government from the U.S. will organize around laws advantage more countries. You turn away from the U.S. evaluation of regime, leave South Border for infrastructure, allow mediating and conduct of UNCLOS board. Countries like Texas, Cuba, and materials, U.S. is not abide by provision of the international regime that regulates money and encourages hearing better for South, sign and ratify changes. Plausible South encourages U.S. to uphold war or whether Chinese or Russian challenge to alliances with the card. Alliances, point the United States ought to become a party to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Experience forms the basis for utilitarian and summarizing Shinababu. 20, phenomena such as the legal level, of them way of forming moral beliefs involves reflecting on experience and forming beliefs about what they look like when we reflect on pleasure, when we conclude good, what plain is bad on the pleasure. And the links are right into intuition, but those are reliable, however, intersections being what formed. Reliable beliefs are about their mental states, afraid of others can we. And the should abandon every belief that is accept our pleasure is good and pain is bad. Government actors have an obligation to aggregate every policy and inherently requires trade-offs because it's always a disagreement between different parties, but necessitates the evaluation of consequences. Different actors have different obligations, and the resolution is asking about the U.S. The existential tests are truly universal values, secure whiteness, number 22, so be the issue, positive, page on all. Survival all administrators to be all universal claims of security, power, kill, all means that universal law and kill means that thinkers be not to be hasty and concluding that humanity wants to conclude about the future whiteness part of the card. Whiteness, extinction ways, rule 22, extinction about any moral theory, theology, humanity, but only makes sense of political community, comprises the entire species of human species. Humanity's collective vision makes ends everyone shares, less important human goes, extinct all human action toward it, long-term goals. Meaningless we with the last generation value lines depend on flow of generation and collision makes the advantage successful. Grades and taxes are the highest risk of Asian war. Goes to 24, the odds are unconfident, high Chinese service gets a Philippine easy war like any other flashpoint couldn't travel like the embassy building grades and taxes. China relies on Coast Guard to celebrate permanent press that have body kind of grades and taxes. China clock committed for grades and taxes. China powers union collection non-ratification, creates business appliances, clear signals and shorts appliances. China 23. Chinese enforcement of eventually to veto over restrictions, but not contested reflecting reading custom and non-recognized outlaw America's objections into fishing. China's practice dispute. China's dispute mechanism. China navigating rules making the last effect doing scope includes everyone China's policy includes. Responding to currency speed frustration includes in the Chinese recommendation ratifying currency odds that is legal sprite. Leadership sending consent will signal world-based order against China and Russia. China's good standing with the China even after distracting Philippines like sending criticized by the card. Criticized only medium card ratification checks region escalation card on 24. Intensive grades and activities because that allow access to the base. Allows plans to fleet modernization and also coast guards with enable sites and countries as well as SCA China's efforts to change law. Start by US certification grades and approach exploits outlaw evaluation for industry benefits of the US feeling receive the quota policies. Efficiency outlaw GT source. It causes quick nuclear isolation craft 24. China encourages water to the Philippines surprised with the inquest carries that tax being across the China contrary the UD emphasis that China seeks to develop nuclear strike force to be modernized against Philippines, modernize capacity, increase confidence in testifying levels of relations with the US places and enable connection US forces. Direct the Philippines and Taiwan question bases 19 to nuclear tax on Christiansen in the SA very quickly because of high tension involves Taiwan and China forcing to forces targeted by China. NATO, climate change, and Ukraine mean legal disputes about the end start cause Arctic war now. Balaji 1031. Ukraine and Russia's Arctic posture by Latvia NATO feels like the Arctic become NATO short Moscow planning over confrontation will climate change reactions. More military presence Ukrainian drones are going force Russia's confrontation will conduct reputation grades with often based on mistalking peace and communication. Later conflict horizontal isolation of the theaters building of Baltic European status by the end start protecting body cover the allies to climate resolving the acts of planning Russia or invoking contact regulations. Violating because the plan of roots ambiguity unifies Arctic Council per Patrick 24 increased government size as well as climate levels of China the capital less enhanced increased above step ratification will cause ratified the case that's with CLCS or fee recommendation for the US misapplication shall conclude Arctic provide last claims every on secret. We consideration the US only council which is as ratified ratification for council bypass agreements all state free figures are several claims with the credit claims extinction issue 23 Arctic emergency theater for global competition to close itself Arctic state wants expanding native authority Ukraine to veto Arctic status of Russia increase in the line nukes in the Arctic and nuclear small wireless the attacks of people that control nuclear that we know ratifications across the globe only Russia war counts exchange in Belfield 17 your corporate US Russia after that promote to essentially the adversary of counters and activation your corporate utilitarian possible for private use of extinction. When the source of great only possible continues as Russian 90% of world's weapons regional war is likely to lead to extinction. The Russian highly extinction nuclearization bundles. 24. Russia's ready to take a nuke in the Arctic and Roman facilities to be used immediately. Orders given by Putin to go ahead to ground to staff weapons equipment necessary for activities. Non-black nihilism is reason to drop them as parasitic evidence. 15. Non-black invaders use pessimism to reduce black people and build a body of objects. This perversity to the object of state participating in anti-blackness. Pessimism makes no sense. Just anti-blackness. Your existence complicit with violence under no circumstances. Your role will be to spread gospel for the occasional will always be theoretical and try down into objectifying the critique of humanism creates up within investigatory political activity around the future of human rights. We go to 18 rights claiming by groups and enemies. And then the original practice contest power to within the socialized rights. These arguments either revolutionaries, advocates of evolution, and opponents of illiberalism. And advance their struggles, they are dispute their destiny to challenge existing arrangement with denying equality to abandon rights, mistake people imposing oppression continually road. Our aim struggles to do today the history of HR is backwards and neglecting historical and invocation of colonial power projects, obscure gains with social movements, HR challenges, power privilege, democratizing social relations, positive tools, good, punish, and always Separation of elements and the study util has limitations and goals positive after required utilitarian has maintained partial concern for everyone. They associate the negative purpose symbol and the purposive attitude towards harmony, positive partial concern for greater good. These are independent, defensive, util, empathetic concern, identified with humanity, concern for future generation, possibly associated with benefits and benefits is negatively associated with harm and harm. UNCLOS was really shaped by the African Union, which alleviates the colonial roots. AU-22 Africans contribution to recognized continent shapes UNCLOS. UNCLOS was on African states before colonial order reformation undertaken by African Union, significant contributions by African states recreation. ABC's credibility is a key gap in imposture, otherwise you have seen as liability. 24. Non-membership means credit by not acting on this to accept ratification bill. Release from partners, experts, know the inability to cooperate leaves unlawful is uneasy. They'll be available. Allies cannot see the U.S. liability ratification requires exercise of settlement with the U.S. disaster support Philippines tribunal. Denied anyone to shot to Russia. Stable lines to check Chinese probing, otherwise goes nuclear homeland building. 20. China challenged the rights of U.S. partners in the South Pacific. U.S. maintained absolute territory of major Chinese for U.S. supports. Its strategy has been successful. Otherwise, they assume the status quo is stable. You can continue to probe and test resolve, proving crisis which easily access power that controls rapidly escalate into full-scale conflict, nuclear war, both sides of PowerPoint centers, asset warming communications, a target isolation tool. Whenever you're guaranteed.
Good for us.
Yes.
Card's not red.
Senkaku's speeds go nuclear.
Okay.
Russia's defensive. Essential spot to preserve global alliances.
Sure, that's fine. I guess experience forms the basis for utilitarianism. Phenomenal introspection, what is the warrant for it?
It says that humans define good in terms of, or humans define what odd statements are. For example, they define good in terms of pleasure, bad in terms of pain. They're just synonymous in terms of feeling.
Okay,
And the sin
I'm asking more like, what is the justification for like phenomenal introspection?
Naturalism.
Okay,
Naturalism indicates that we have
where's
no
the
moral truth
naturalistic
outside.
argument that you made?
There's no moral truth outside of our five senses. Those are our only basis for perception. You don't know anything if you don't have five senses in a brain.
Okay, that just makes a claim that like we seem to use our
Yeah,
senses
but then-
and like things like
Yeah, but that's the only part you're asking. The
Why
next
is
part
that
says
a
that
reason?
senses mean that phenomenal introspection determines that good is good. Good is pleasurable and bad, and pain is painful.
Sure. I guess how do we like phenomenally introspect something?
Well, humans define words. Humans define odd in terms of good and bad in terms of pain.
Okay, but how do we like phenomenally introspect things as like moral and immoral? Like what is
Well,
the
humans
sort of,
define what morality is through its senses because naturalism is the only basis for facts.
Okay, we define what like through our senses. I guess we feel things like pain and pleasure. Why is that like
Senses
a
are actually-
question of
pain is
ethical?
actually
These
bad.
are just things that we seem to sense. I
Pain is
don't
actually
understand
bad
why
for our
they're-
senses. Our senses
They're bad for
determine
our
what is good.
senses, but that is not reason as to why they
Senses
are not
determine what is
ethical.
good or bad because moral truths are only derived through our five senses.
Okay, but we have things like bad desires that exist that like
Yeah,
for example
because those are
like murders.
anti-utilitarian. For example, if I rip a
Okay,
ton of
so like
cocaine,
desires
that's
are
bad
only
because-
good in the context of util, which makes no sense because you just said the exact opposite of that.
If I do a bunch of drugs, that's bad for my pleasure value because in the long run, I'll be addicted to these drugs.
And that's why people get addicted because they have the desire to do drugs. All right, that's fine. Let's
You
go
can
to.
take long-term effects into account.
Okay, sure, but that's assuming that we all okay, whatever. Government actors have an obligation to aggregate. What is like? They have an obligation to aggregate. Why? I guess.
Because government actors, they signed up to pass yes/no bills. Intrinsic to that
I
is
guess
the fact
like
that they need to
why
determine
is
whether
signing it?
something-
Where did government sign up to like use util? I guess is what I'm asking. Like
Well-
yes/no bills has nothing to do with the pain or pleasure that like.
The argument is that they have to aggregate. Aggregation ultimately leads to utilitarianism, but a stable basis.
Yes.
for it.
Why do we have to aggregate? Is my question.
because that's what government signed up for. When you sign a bill, it's yes.
What do you mean? Like,
If you sign a bill and if you veto a bill, it is an active act, and you have to, and the government has to know, or has to at least try to know whether this bill harms some and hurts others.
Greenwald 22 evidence, like, I guess extinction outweighs under any moral theory. This seems to be just in the context of Kant. I.e.,
No.
the article is called, quite literally, a Kantian view of extinction. What does this have to do with any other theory that is not Kant?
Read a theory and we'll tell you.
Awesome. Order. I'll send a doc.
You said what case?
Sorry, 4 case is advantage. I'm sending a doc. Should be sent. How about everyone answer?
Give me a second. I can get it.
Okay. Tell me when you do. Oh, the word count changed from exactly 30,000. That's a shame. Did anyone get it? Or?
I have it.
Okay.
Good.
Anyone not ready? Awesome. First off, this keeps happening where I touch it and it doesn't. First off, metaphysics upon a paradox of relation that marks blackness and nothingness. The world operates via definition by opposition. The being defines its consistent relation, difference of blackness and non-being. The metaphysical blackness has blackness to do with state of existence and opposition. Nothingness justifies all attempts to eliminate from the world analysis the way the words we use by body on a daily basis and feeling structured by in and by the analysis of the 1AC 118. And like words of self-literary back into nothing, so schematization, calculations, scientific purposes, or check biological, visual, semblance, or an illusion African body, graphical evidence from European ones in the whole of Africa becomes an alteration of humanity, obscures European existential ontological constitution, African existence, identity, words, blocking, innocent, instrumentalizing, philosophizing, and intellectualizing, all failed metaphysical, whole cosmic how the body and people, and order, part of the curling ideas, desires, and values. And this also substitutes impervious to legal, historical, and political change. And UNCLOS is always fully focused on particular nations, but the Ramireddy African water, chopping the poverty over 40 over to November 23. African central resources are the interests of foreign nations that are crucial to economy and food security, and global protection is dominated by France. U.S. despite water being wedded to Africa, other citizens were next to black and white that send the message to stimulate the social countries, personal management, security, other models, and potential laws of interacting against power to exemplify them. So economic we argue that the world equals to African resources, in particular in relation to illegal fishing, how that more covers the African focus of meetings already marginalized and part of the depletion needs versus only worse situation wide. In the power to supply protecting Africa will push people further poverty and contribute to the insecurity. And seeing the alternatives on knowledge revolution, rejecting the human metaphysical world, the same theory, anti-blackness, the favorite analysis, embracing the spirit rather than the human, more 18. In all, the revolution will destroy the world as an institution of metaphysical blackness will continue as long as the world exists. And honestly, a revolution is a revolution that will destroy all of the uselessness to spirit exceeding perceiving the metaphysical to keep, but then one day the world will apologize for anti-black brutality will only produce exception interpretation, we dimension the money seeks socialization, power, material facts, socialization, and serious contradiction where person conversation blackness is facial reason to reject them and comes before weighing and comes before weighing the affirmative. I'll answer the voter. One is Bible fatigue, anything else forces black only forces black people to talk about anti-blackness debate, which makes it inevitable to choose alternative. The all is for all is when no one talks about anti-black. For example, straight reading extinction solves racism, 3 contexts of pessimism, non-nihilism. We actually do something that engages spirituality, which is good. 4 engage with black literature specifically, and anything else is the affirmative, where we just read right authors in the context of your advocacy. 5 with Vaughn, Meza, and Kamani as judges who all said I should run this and around proves it's not anti-black. You have no black full-time coaches here in the room with you. Good heart, it's not true. That's above IU, the whole entire critique. AU is wrong. Offer does not offer countries does not support countries being anti-black. Now next off T. Interpretation and or must be written and all must be specified. The Code 214 in violation they didn't. When it presumption course district only most precise insight experts that's after particularly research and vision grounded possibly from them specify the agent actually they don't know. Speculates the affirmative spectrum the one is the argument by lying to AC clarification agent, which means they can't read count the sending statements which then these are the branch competing trips anything else raises law which the judge finds reasonable to debate or deterrence to mitigate future reason or reasons don't win for being fair. Next off.
The value criterion consists of self-determination, normativity, and reducing digit personal interest in the whole, which means we must defend methodology allows us to maximize our own autonomy while not infringing on other agency. This independently answers to all of their utility index, or all of their reason utility is truth and when attract. Relative to desire, value, judgment, have no number to see if it's independent desires, interest, relational theory, problem solution, absolute uses, analysis, or coherent, they conflict with actual meaning of some people set of desires, and prefer utilitarianism morally, point one, reason morally, interesting, one, some consider no matter happens for the majority on a date. If a large majority, I'd say the very small amount of people, large people gain much larger, they recall utilitarianism, suffering with you would be happy with larger, larger, not majority, they would no wrong or balance of one gross person. Pleasure results of something about pleasure, see all the more, however, and two, because only consider determining actions specifically good about you, justifies rough conclusions, and sometimes say, so being intrinsically bad in itself, and 2 to 6. If consequences with an action, maximally good consequence from a individual certain rights not being differentiated interest, you can also do them together, traded off, they put the recognize the normatism as the person's out on the two house protected, and honor they be morally functional, or chocolate made return to the living safe, remain safe for all the churches, obligation, return, inaccessible, or just not for the free accessibility, but against all our that for those people feel safe in space, or respond to that. Canadian United States, not being Harvard with UNCLOS, we have parties, can be bound by treaty, United Nations love it. International treaty of universal sovereignty, being a party with the treaty, they must consent to be bound. Mandates the United States agree will give away the subject of autonomy when they're bound by absolute next off, and see. Each person has their own understanding of right, wrong, and pure spiritual and 16. Their dangerous about morality, personal states, answer being who wants to say what's right or moral truth severity. This includes ruling as full self-impulse, self-dish, no moral principles, everything based on individual desires, and usual triggers egoism, even though whom otherwise one as well. Or decide what concept of moral choice, the decision of the growth, have more money, Filipino positives, motivation, self-influence, more active, after my results, social, whatever, self-underlying, self-monitoring, even negatively correlated with athletic concern, founded or divergence between real behavior, have the potential to become a neurobiological system, and or interpretation, the affirmative burden, bringing the United States up hard, a party that unclose, negative, for the concept of wars, or it's also for one precision, the resolutions, all natural, the resolution, for states, the point for anything outside of the room, scoring life for them, from the beginning, from the beginning, and our models, the Harvard-Westlake French tricks too, is all educational debates that happen under their trips, so there will be a lot of debates about meta-ethics. These debates are valuable, saying even all moral obligation to exist, use against our answer the argument that moral obligation don't exist, and 3% of competence, resolvability, kind of probabilities from resolve is possible only by virtue of ensure non-arbitrary decision be, the competence promotes higher quality, effective, frequency, much stronger defense arguments instead of the extending arguments for risk of office. Now, instead of who's wrong, we need to think that things like pain and pleasure are good because of our biological chemistry in the car concedes proves non-internal ethics for us, also proves that they're absolutely horrible on it. The world is wrong. The article is literally called a Kantian view on ethics, which teaches us fundamentally to answer any of our arguments which can apply to everything else, not disadvantage. Under utilitarianism, nothing good because only exists for which means they justify non-existence as a major certificate that puts the affirmative double my other aim. We truly know people who's going wrong, which in case you reject utilitarian principle or read they can know nothing good, which means the advantage for the negative and or sex. But except all of us, there's something in nature, we face death, and false exist, all these exist or concern from the triple. We'll say that we also pleasure because evil songs that outward life is worth living. However, this does not all the absence of it's not good, even the pleasure of it is not enjoyed by everyone. Remember, it's the bad pleasure, not bad if you do avoid existence. And only some evidence here, it would be a reason as to why it would be good and negative utilitarianism was not true, but it's not a reason that is true. Heavily, next to heavily errors and primary sense, almost all kind of arguments are caused by psychological bias, including their Kahani evidence from the benefit of sex. It is in the psychological phenomenon or actual quality of life that explains positive stuff with anything that you should call rather negative experience. This distorts our future about the future being happening, etc. Rating good things about the most important symbol is improve the quality of life, do not include moral assessment. And party uncles or equal managerials, runners the ocean, if it reaches expectation, the dualism between nature and the human works to define the ocean, these relates utility, to balls 23. I'm making something to story including independent models of risk conception nature, suffer human laws, conception nature, machine made under discrete little parts, not human world. Seen as the major current major legal instrument regulating world section is unclose market, that unclose and the eco-dualism between the self nature aggravates the launcher, listen, effects, infinite psychological bonds, we dispossession, agency, back under one. Dualism between people and nature, logic, renew the world, and the extinction of many life forms, as human beings, which is own material well being, the expense of smaller, weaker humans, animals, and plants that clashes or escalation because of disaster and devastation of environmental while it created wise. The Western adherence to dualist ideologies and new world order that derives our experience nature, but all living things to get the recognition of fragility or ecosystem will be important for restoration of planet. And one easy for reason no kind of axiology argument is very reducible, don't explain why human pain is the word most important value. This religions of systems have one or is too late to clarify what's the 16. There must be some support that we are most cannot live with humans, but humans cannot live without them, without bees, would feed without trees, we could not breathe in their percentages and then take and made electrician of other forms of life, including our own. There's never been a species mostly just to be defined. Even the color self-intelligence does not affect our actions, whether anything by the opposite plus knowledge or more complex brain series, communicate with chemicals of whatever species of animal culture, does not contribute to climate change or habitat destruction. Any humans responsible for animals suffering only extinction solved in 18. Human beings causing environmental suffering. First, human contribution to climate change and devastating ecosystems. Second, increasing the population, encouraging unequal. The third factor, farming, constant creation, millions of animals is nothing but suffering. There is just too much form of about too many animals, and soon turn across the going to continue to increase our own science figuring out a reason, filling along with our own continuing existence. And the overwhelming that the AI research agrees that AGI is like a live 2047 for legislature with the most recency, recency because the court they reached before. And legislators have kind of new drugs that 74 research college top tier venues the chance from machines of performing humans that possible task was estimated by 10% by 20 minutes of market there. And AGI allowing human body to human suffering, non-human suffering, obviously always extinction did only sleep for AGI in the first place. Cross.
Okay, yeah. You didn't do your arguments other than a stock.
No.
Okay.
I don't know what you mean by hidden, but like.
Yeah, sure. The advantage, they can do the whole wipeout stuff.
What do you mean by like animal white now?
Or did you read that humans are responsible for immense animal suffering? Did you read that card?
I did read that card.
You did or you didn't?
I did.
Okay,
I just
nice.
said
Metaphysics is founded upon anti-black world. Explain this, warrants, why, which parts of it?
Our argument is that metaphysics are founded upon the paradoxical relation that Marx blackness has nothingness. The warrant in this is that because social institutions such as humanism, technology, etc.,
That's my question. What about humanism, tech making anti-black?
Yes, and I'm going to answer that question. Things structures like humanism that have things like technology, science, empiricism, etc., have all been empirically used to codify things like anti-blackness that exist within the status quo.
Historically, it's taught by anti-blackness. Warrants explains how.
Yeah, sure. Like the system of humanism itself is predicated on things like slavery existing in the first place, which is the warrant evidence.
Why?
Our argument is that because humanism was because of the world of
Is human rights good?
What do you mean human rights?
Is human rights good?
Our context is that there are human rights, even if they were good, there are no human rights in the context of anti-blackness because
Why?
yes, that was everything I just said above. Because humanism is predicated on anti-black structures that exist within the world, which means that human rights stuff, that is all a prerequisite on blackness being included within human rights violations that we are talking about.
Okay, so the argument is that humanism doesn't extend to black people.
No, the argument is that humanism it should, but it doesn't.
So humanism should be a thing for black people, but it doesn't.
Well, humanism
so
in a
the
perfect
alternative-
world in which people aren't racist and do things that are really racist that exist within
What's
the
the
metaphysical
alternative to
structures.
humanism?
What?
Alternative humanism, what is it?
What do you mean the alternative humanism?
Well, you said humanism bad.
Oh yeah, if there wasn't the metaphysics that existed, then humanism would be pretty fucking cool, but it does exist.
What's the
That's a
alternative?
shame.
That you say that there should not be
Yes.
humanism?
Oh, the alternative is an ontological revolution. Arguments that structures such as humanism,
I understand that
universality, etc.,
humanism
are
and universality
all.
are bad. Getting rid of them, what do you replace it with?
Yes. Our ontological revolution is where we look away from the world, i.e., a spiritual reorientation
What
towards
does
the
that
world.
look like? Do human rights exist?
Okay, if you could just let me answer questions.
Yeah.
Okay, a spiritual reorientation towards the world entails things that don't invest in humanism, science, technology, all the things I critiqued previously.
Sure. The gold evidence is slavery is bad. Slavery is good under utilitarianism. Are you justifying slavery being pleasurable?
I'm saying you just justified it because you read Util. Util's pretty racist. Justifies it.
I'm sorry, that's not my question. Are you justifying slavery being pleasurable?
The argument is that wait, what do you mean? People think that slavery is pleasurable. Obviously, that's bad, but
Is
it is
human
something
death
that
good
people
for
think.
animals? Yes, no.
Wait, what?
Is human death good for animals? Yes.
Yes, because they don't cause they don't cause bad things like that we just talked about.
I'll send it out.
Put your shoes on, bro.
I forgot I wasn't wearing them.
Oh.
They'll be staying off for the duration of the round. I'm sorry. everyone.
Oh, bro.
I'll send it out.
Yeah, sure.
shoes theory.
What's the order?
The advantage. T.
Oh. There you go. The advantage. Okay.
Sovereignty NC or the util K. It's like the Hobbes NC but unfinished and then the util K. I don't know what that is. The Warren K. That's it.
Sorry, you gotta go again.
Advantage. T. Comparison. Sovereignty. Warren.
Okay, you're gonna need to say that one more time. I'm sorry, I just don't understand what the order is.
Advantage.
Yes.
Eco K. Advantage. The eco K is in the T. The egoism stuff we don't care about our own
Okay.
pleasures. The NC it's like Hobbes but then unfinished. And then the
Hobbes,
K.
but then okay. Good. I'm good.
Sorry. Can I get that one more time?
Advantage.
Yeah.
The T argument.
Yeah.
Egoism.
Cool.
Util K.
Cool.
Warren K.
Okay, I had it right. I want to make sure. I just took a book. Okay.
Good?
Alright. Yeah.
Everyone?
Wait, is there a doc?
Yeah.
Let me download that real quick. It's down.
Benatar, one, no link. We haven't said every person should obsessively try to prolong their life just that they should have the ability to continue to consent out ways people can choose to live or not, and many want to prevent the fact that they're still alive. To justify suicide good. For Benatar's dead wrong. You should ask what calculations he makes to say that everyone has this. Yes, that doesn't assume painful nuclear war that melts all skin off and starvation. Yes, positive. He tells true as humans are intrinsically motivated towards empathy and tricks themselves into believing pleasure is more valuable than pain. Now, Eco-K, more too early. Unique to the links of plan, fairness, clash, reps, states, because when we them is incoherent debates, competitive, they off the ballot level, laws, tiny links. During interact with utopian fiat, debate is content neutral, it's 40 long, done by school, family, friends, religion, other bounds. Teams advocate for the easiest suggestion on the greatest ethical one, they won't forget about battle for anything, subjectivity, shape of fairness, screws, internalized screws, not lost, extinction waves, infinite painful, irreversible makes all violence worse, permutation to both, because the alternative is too big, can overcome the single link. The extraction is devil, they dropped Russia and China are competing easy, the produces that. Now, animal white men did not say why nuclear war killed animals, did not read a link, our selection, birds, bugs will survive, cotton virus, as the humans died. In 5 years, repopulating finds it out in the long run, did not say why humans are that worse, nor that animals are sufficient, considering a nuclear war is also bad for animals because it causes painful. Our selection is proven by effective by bugs and spectre will be able to solve nuclear wars proven by different asteroids, actors, different actors subject to obligations robbed, and the state's obligation to aggregate to help people do as well. Says that we must respect life. Now, AGI, they have no sovereignty for it. The experts are way humans give out after lots of pain. This but you should ear out for the chance of value, no SI, no impact, Amiga 24. The understand SI to the greater scrutiny of initial reduction, take over other factors which political they're minimized economic factors and concise pie, German many off the grid. No one that the global does not have access to internet, so the AI was successful. They were made to us in group of survivors. Now the T, it means either dictionary, they're both one after only two F's, two pigs, then later we lose them. At A specs wrong, she across his checks, we lose the pigs, painfully regress because he can always ask to spec more. And they have no examples of ground laws because context checks now egos and they're wrong. States don't have pain and pleasure, so they have an obligation to aggregate. This says that people lack empathy, not that they should, because pain is bad for all. They dropped actor specificity, which means that in our way step is just defensive because they need to prove 100% risk and no more obligation. Precision is wrong. They have not defined the word optional education. They can celebrate an NC, just not a skeptical argument because it allows them to have infinite tautology, which is a 2-to-1 valid application. Epistemic competence is wrong. You have no idea what it means because it's still operates on offensive definition about we. So we define ethics and we define it in terms of pain and pleasure. Grunwald says you should use it because every humanity is because you should use Pascal's wager, i.e. there's a chance that we can define ethics, but extinction precludes that. I expect there's no universal, even if there's no universal moral obligation, there's a functional obligation stating you choose between different actions, which is what they sign up for. If we don't prove a moral obligation, we redefine the word out now. Sovereignty and C1. There must be abiding in order to determine when the sovereignty is good. Otherwise, Nazi Germany would be able to determine sovereign. 2. There's no recourse for when a sovereign dies. It takes ethics on binding. 3. Extinction is the worst harm which kills the sovereign. Now, their offense is wrong. Fiat solves it. Fiat US agreement broadly, which means it's in line with the sovereign. Now, the utilitarian God is wrong. Slavery is painful. Slavery is painful. They should not try to glorify it. They're wrong. And certain rights are solved because they're pain and pleasurable. No examples here. Access is wrong. Staking and calling tap cells. I'll be done later. Now, boring K. Cross-apply framework. Perm to bear. They'll find out all shields linked or can't overcome the square. Rejects links to the square. There's an absolute ground. They must contextualize from the old sovereignty. Now, line to line. They can't solve with the vowel. Only one you can't solve. No, only the one you can't solve future rounds, speeches, cross-links, what happened in between rounds, projection racism can't be solved via the ballot, and we would change blocks ballots or worse because there's bad judges and technical debaters can determine what's racist or not. Additionally, it's a perfect crime with zeros or reps first argument because they were racist too by saying the state should have immense power. Technical litigation bad, judges should intervene one, otherwise we double down. And there because of competitive incentives, 2 false positives. Novices can't defend themselves against racism. Now the UNCLOS bad stuff, this app is the opposite of this. It spends African easy to drop the EU likes because it allows independence and why anti-black permutation to both now the ontologies of card on extending humanism good. They dropped it's necessary and are unique just because liberation movements are happening now, which ensures human rights for women, African Americans, etc., which means that we should embrace it. The alternative drops no alternative. Now ontology is not offense. 1. Caps on progress don't justify making life worse, and justifies by reaching those caps are good. 2. Warren has 0 examples of what institutions are bad, just that they're bad now, not that they'll irredeemably bad now. The alternative can't guide action is ontological reduction can pass UNCLOS. They drop that easy competition is never, which takes other the instruction link as well. New humanism are capable of addressing the critique of new humanism are capable of and 20 humanons, which is advocates for new humanists, rather inspiring college think getting incorporating limits of humanism, governing institutions such as new humanism, and tingle.
Voting issues?
Let me see. You justify suicide good.
Okay. What are the answers on T?
At round. It's an E-spec wrong. Hard.
What are like the warrants for? Wait, you read the card?
Yeah.
Alright. Wait, which card did you read?
First.
Say it again?
First.
Alright. Order is case, which is the voter. Then, a nice surprising turn of events is going to be T. Nilesh getting the recognition it finally deserves.
I called it.
Everybody gangster till the order is T for the 2 and R.
Okay, is everyone good?
Yeah.
Sweet.
First line answer the voter in case they say we say that justifying util is good. No, we said that you justified util is good, not us, which turns every single one of your arguments was an argument that under your framework was specifically what would say that that suicide, which turns all of your arguments, even if it is bad, drop the argument, solves all your offense now. T page. The lesson for today's debate is you cannot just drop a precision standard and read a dictionary.com piece of evidence that is game over because it outweighs every single one of your standards independently. You have to be tech over truth. I know you probably don't want to vote on this argument, but they conceded precision outweighs and they've not made any indicts to our evidence, which means it's going to be game over before the game has even begun. Now, extend topicality, the interpretation of affirmative must defend both ICC and UNCLOS violation. They solely defend UNCLOS, extend the gold scene 14 evidence and or is ambiguous because it's meant to imply both and or simultaneously. That means we are unable to generate legal bindingness from any law for more definition because or in the context of the resolution was not explicit normative judicial law resolve these by defaulting to a conjunctive claim where all the still elements are satisfied simultaneously, not just a norm surrounding and or even if it might not seem intuitive. This is a rule in U.S. legal documents that must be satisfied, which is what the Goldstein evidence is for. U.S. federal law will always require defaulting to and resolve the ambiguity of the disjunctive or if the policy did not specifically clarify whether the law defends and every listed element. Now you're filtering this debate through precision. It is a conceded standard. They conceded it outweighs as well. The words of the topic are the only objective stable stasis point. The topic was determined in advance and is what people do when doing prep. If they affirmative doesn't have a definitional defense of their model, they would lose lose regardless of other portions of the standards debate. Their offense just proves that debating a different topic would be good. Not that the plan is topical. Winning precision means that if you think the affirmative is really, really cool and it doesn't matter because it's not even about the resolution in the first place, which makes all their offense fundamentally accessible. Not being precise justifies things like Penn, Royce, AJ, and Durham PA app that defends literally one clause in the entirety of the UNCLOS treaty, even if the counter term doesn't directly justify that. Not being precise opens up the floodgates. Now they have not given you a pragmatics outweigh precision argument, which means it's going to be which means it's game over because we're already winning that precision outweighs and just means it's game over. I know you don't want to vote on this, but that is already sufficient now. Goldstein is way more precise because our definition of our precise legal context of policy making. Actual policymakers say and the question of and or, which means all legal precision. We don't treat the plan like a policy. Goldstein is a literal U.S. federal magistrate judge. He was a judge for decades and in one of the highest positions a judge can have. There's less than 600 in the United States. If there's 40 years of experience, and or is always defaulted to the and. That is definitionally the most precise. Now your definition is definitely not precise. You read dictionary.com. This is not one precise because one, it is not in the context of the law, which means it does not have any interaction with our definition in the first place. I.e., our argument is that because it's a policymaker that is good, and that was the argument that we specifically made in the 1 and C, which was the red line for what a precise definition is. This is not in the context of this is not in the context of anything other than some random dictionary definition that you pulled out, which could have been any of the multiple choices that dictionary.com had picked, but you can choose the specific definition because this is the definition that is in the context of the law. They've also conceded Goldstein is a lot more good. Now I'll do the counter-inter proper. Even if they win their standard on the counter-inter, there's zero risk they can win it outweighs precision when you drop that out of the 1 and C. They've never explained how limits or ground outweigh in any way, shape, or form, which means you're holding them to that. And then 2A, additionally, all their definition was doesn't prove the counter-inter. Your definition just said or, which is just as silly. If you think that and or only defaults to or, that's just as silly as saying and or only defaults to and, but they've conceded that our definitional version of it is a lot better. They say the app ground, but I will give you a case list right now that proves that there was definitely a lot of app ground. You can read a whole risk philosophy app like Kant, which you literally did a few rounds ago. Things like treaties are universally good. You get to read cards from ICC and UNCLOS. UNCLOS ground is proven by Lynbrook, which was you, and ICC with Iowa City West. And I think there's been ones multiple Klein Oak, JW. These head good after ICC and UNCLOS have considerable ground that they improve. United States hedge say the US hedge is good to read that evidence. C, read a policy after 3 minutes. ICC 3 minutes. UNCLOS. I mean we have to redouble the evidence. And B, net ground and the app ground are the same if you defend both because I have to find lit that says both the ICC and UNCLOS are bad. I'll do the ground proper. One is precision controls the creativity collapses a garbage solves the advocacy inflated internal link chains. They attempt to dodge 4 questions that offense outweighs cannot engage good lit if you are prep 2. Even if you do win this one, you already 1% outweighs. So even if you don't buy a tech over truth 2, the fact that the resolution implies that you do both means there has to be literature about doing both. Otherwise, NSC would have chosen it. 3, it's infinite aggressive. They have no card saying that lit doesn't exist and they haven't proved a team can theoretically do no research. We can arbitrarily intermediate them that no lit exists for us, but no sentence like they have set a high threshold for this 2-hour extension because the literal resolution is our precise interp that not justifies saying, oh, there's no lit on the actual topic, so let's just do something else. Now they say picks bad. One is terminal defense. Picks happen under their model anyways, but the 2-hour will inevitably exaggerate picks like one part of the treaty, but that happens under their model, i.e. one part of the UNCLOS treaty or one core in ICC. 2, potential neg justification doesn't justify app abuse. That would potentially justify app abuse because the app could justify reading 40 a prioris and the neg could read 50 condo picks. It doesn't make it good. 3, yes, they're universal advantage areas. I already did those above. 4, non-unique in turn if the neg doesn't have specific prep, they will resort to cheating word picks and process counterclaims, which are even worse. 5 is perms in theory solve. You literally read the and or doesn't mean across the board, which is the reason you could have won that a pick that doesn't complete. Debaters read and win picks bad all the time. Winning norm setting on their shell already proves that theory works. This you can turn the leverage the affirmative against tiny picks, but I can't leverage anything against a tiny app that I don't, or against a tiny app that I don't, that I haven't prepped now. They've conceded all the paradigm issues. They've conceded that we'll concede that fairness outweighs, which they did, or which they specifically did on the K. You can cross apply that to this flow. That means that fairness comes before everything else because debates, or because every single education that, or every single benefit that can possibly have requires you evaluating arguments fairly in the first place, which is also a reason as to why you evaluate this argument. Also a reason as to why you evaluate this argument. First, they conceded no RBIs. They definitely didn't have any. They conceded. They dropped the debaters. It's logical to drop their argument because they have advocacy because they don't have any offense that would be to justify voting negative. Now use competing interests. They've not. I did not hear a full reasonability claim, but it doesn't matter because they've lost their interest is non-specific resolution, which means that winning the definition debate makes it auto-reasonable. Reasonability also doesn't do anything until you just cross-applies to theory. Cannot be reasonably topical. You either are, you aren't. And it prevents judges from imposing their own BS metric and allows concrete metrics for determining abuse.
Look, I know for sure you guys don't want to vote on this argument, but there's 2 problems. They conceded precision outweighs. They've not given you a pragmatics outweigh precision war, which is game over. 2, their definition is probably one of the worst definitions I've ever seen. 3, I just line by line all of their stuff. They have to answer every single one of those points to even have a risk of the ballot. And 4, all their standards were solved by the amazing case list that I just gave you. Game over. You 4.
Yep.
Oh,
Maybe back.
Case T. There's a card.
There's a card?
Yep. Pretty high.
Bonk.
Okay.
Something out. Is everyone good?
I've got it.
Where?
Got it. Opening the door. Case T. Yep.
Are you up?
What? Myself's existential risk drop. Now T, you're not noting on and or means and. They pretty much didn't extend the war for precision outweighs in the 2 and R. This is going to be pretty important because the 1 and C said precision outweighs because of ground. Remember that. And I've answered their warrant for ground. So I answered their terminal impact of precision, which matters the most because I answered their contextual warrants in the 1 and C. The 1 and C was pretty much unglobal, and they did not extend the warrant in the 2 and R. I will just win the predictability as that way. You should not view predictability for precision in a vacuum, but rather in the context of this T argument because I answered the impact of group division ground in this T argument. It doesn't matter predictability always in every other T argument, but this T argument, they drop that terminal defense to the different ground that we only allow whole res UNCLOS or whole res IC, which means that there's only 2 asks. Look, the impact of precision is this quote. The impact of precision is this quote unquote division of ground absent predictability. Research and division of ground are impossible. That seems to be like a ground argument, not a precision argument. And the 2 and R did not explain why precision intrinsically outweighs just because of ground. So if I'm winning picks or at ground, then I just win. Also extending fairness outweighs. They make the debate unfair. They said the 2 and R dropped in the 1 area that says they asked the ballot above all else, which means education, secondary. Which means that debates about court decisions or political debates are 0 impact, and the jurisdiction argument in the 2 and R basically 0 impact because they drop fairness outweighs. They care most about the ballot. It's LD now. Policy 1 and 2 warranted equals 0 and was pretty unflowable. The 2 and R warrant for jurisdiction is both non-existent and new jurisdiction doesn't matter because theory arguments create norms and they explode the topic. No lit thing says either no lit that says that they can find either ICC or UNCLOS nor no. They say we explode the topic. This is wrong. Our topic only allows 2 whole reserves, which is sufficient to prep, and it does not allow implementing agreements which answer their arguments. Look, picks is a crush. Drop that there's only 2 asks, no loss of ground, but ICC and UNCLOS are totally unrelated. One day gets hosed, automatically pick, till at least half the 1 you expect inevitable, and also late breaking, which is better for the negative because the negative, which is better for the negative because the negative gets contextual. The contextual research on either IC bad or UNCLOS bad, while they delete the half of the 1 AC automatically. They say 2 and R exaggerates wrong because they're 2 unrelated topics. Law of the C has literally nothing to do with the ICC writ large. They say abuse is wrong because only 2 asks, and the theory doesn't check because it makes debate still. And theory arguments are writ large bad. They did not make this theory checks argument, so I don't want to know why I'm answering. And the condo and operators, they're bad arguments that can easily be beaten, while picks are unbeatable because the law of the C ratification has literally nothing to do with ICC. Process and cheating are wrong because there's only 2 asks. There's no need to cheat, which then can prep for no deficit. No to leverage because it forced it into 1 anyway, which creates late breaking debates and prep outweighs next prep because the affirmative is structurally harder for me. So no 1 AR versus the 2 and R not that can jump, and especially since they're hosed us into 2 different affirmatives. Do not view predictability versus precision in a vacuum. And after I read defense, they're wrong. They feel as to very little contextual evidence to both UNCLOS and ICC, which is why I did not read both the UNCLOS and ICC app, because they have contention specific to either. For example, you could pick out a 1 and say that is bad for UNCLOS, or that's bad for Con, or that's bad for Hobbes, because those have different contextual arguments. They have no case list of why they solve our argument. So any risk of precision, any risk of debatability outweighs because when they drop the impact to precision. It's not prep because they can easily prep for 2 affirmatives. Their argument is about division of ground. They can easily divide 2 affirmatives. This is not that hard to understand.
Okay,